Welcome to my video on the 2013 Telltale games The Walking Dead Season 2. I am gonna start with a spoiler-free review and, where I'm not even spoiling the first game, and then I will get into thoughts on this game in which I will spoil both of these two first seasons. I haven't played past this yet, so I'm incapable of spoiling anything past it. And I think that... Right, so the game is rated M for mature, so will this video be. And yeah, I fucking loved this. Holy shit. I'm not sure the review itself is going to be super long, because a lot of this, is very similar to the first. It's essentially like the there's a couple of things they adjust, and I'm going to go over those. But yeah, the extremely short version, TLDW version, is just, yeah, if you like the first one, this is definitely also well worth it. Oh, and as like with the first one, I have only played through this once, so I cannot comment on the branching. Yeah, I mean, compared to other branches, I can only comment on the one I chose. And yeah, so the still playing it on PC, and I'm not going to give away the plot, but I will say this does function as a sequel to the first season. And yeah, so I'm not going to tell you who you play as this time. If you badly want to know, it is very easy to find out that piece of information. I am very glad that I did not know before going into this. But in some ways, the new player character here is different from, the yeah, it's not a spoiler to say, in the first one you play as Lee, and I talked, I said what I had to say about him in my video on the first game. But yeah, this time you play as someone who is in a there's something about the new player character that is different, and the game really capitalizes on that. I thought they did a phenomenal job with this perspective shift, and I think that, yeah, I have a lot to say about it, but it's gonna go in the spoiler section. Yeah, the let's see. I guess I'll just briefly note. So, I when I did my video on the 400 days, or is it just called 400 days? Possibly I talked about how I didn't feel like it made, it makes some decisions that I didn't think made the most sense for capitalizing on the success of the first season. And now that I've played this, I very much stand by that. I will talk at least a little about a change that I would personally have made to 400 days when I get into spoilers. But yeah, I think, let's get to the... Yeah, so this one, I'm willing to acknowledge it might just be me, but it seemed like this one was at least slightly more about the moral choices, which were already a big part of the first one, compared to puzzles. I wouldn't rule out that they maybe got some feedback that people were like, I'll play something else if I want puzzles, but the moral choices were really, yeah. there are still, you know, the puzzles are as simple and sometimes simpler, and the yeah, I think so. One thing that is different here is that I honestly, I think I'll just briefly note, I feel like they really took a good hard look at, season one, and were like, okay, what can we improve upon? Because, there's not that much that you could do that much better, but they did find the couple of things. I believe I mentioned in my video on the first one, there were times in the first one where, you know, there was like a, let's go with hub area, and when you return to it, it looks like, oh, I can talk to this character, and you would go up and see if you could talk to them, and they would just say, I don't want to talk right now. Each time that I tried that, and I kept returning to that hub, and I kept thinking, oh, now there's going to be something, and I don't think that happened even once here. So yeah, very nicely done. And this one also, they really, the there are still invisible borders, but they are less of an issue. And honestly, this one felt even more like sort of a interactive cutscene, visual novel kind of thing, and I think that works well. If I want to play, a game where I'm running around WASD and there's zombies, like, there's plenty to choose from, around this same time. By this point, we had both of the Left 4 Dead games. I hope at some point in the future there will be a third. I've heard mixed things about Back 4 Blood. Anyway, the, yeah, there's Contagion, there's various Resident Evil games, but the, and yeah, it's easier for them to cut down on the invisible borders if there is less walking around. And while the first season did already do a really solid job of not having you, like, get bored with any of the settings, I will say the fact that in this one there's less of you returning to a hub area, I think worked. Like, if I'm being brutally honest, there was at least one time where it felt like, oh wow, we're still here, in the first one. I didn't get bored, but it did. Yeah, I'm glad that they, in this one, went for more, yeah. And so the character you play as is not very physically big, and there is now a run function, which, I don't think that I didn't miss it hugely in the first one, but something I really appreciate by its inclusion here is when you run in this, like, the when you engage the run function on your own, at least, the character here doesn't move that much faster than faster than without the run function engaged, but not that much faster than Lee at walking speed in the first one. So yeah, that was a good way to just, because it's, there were still times where there's not a huge amount of backtracking. That's one of the big, that's where you really badly want to be able to sprint and run in a game like this, where you don't necessarily have to hurry that much, but the inclusion really helped underline, wow, this is, yeah, I am a more vulnerable, you know, from a physical point of view here. And they really do something compelling with that, which I will talk about in the spoiler section. Now, I think that does bring us, let's see. There's at least one, right, so yes, other times you do run where the game is having you run. right, essentially sprint. You where you move faster. This has more of that and less of, like, there already wasn't a huge amount of like you shooting zombies in season 1. I believe there's even less here, or maybe it's just spaced out more. I'm not, whatever. But yeah, one of the ways that they help spice up, gameplay is that, yeah, there are these sprint sections where they use the QTE, and you are now, pressing one of the four following: W, A, S, or D. And basically you are sprinting, and you have to like quickly duck out of the way or that sort of thing. And it worked really well. It was very adrenaline pumping, and it also really helped underline, as mentioned, the vulnerability of this player character, that there is so much running. I'm not 100% sure that there's that much less shooting, but there is not an awful lot of other physical violence by you, the player character, in this. So, and that worked really, really well. I think that does more or less bring us to, so they definitely understood that, that's one of the complaints I have heard about, early Telltale games. Some have felt that it was too limited what you could do with the QTEs or QTs. And this time one of the things they do is that there's now this thing where, like, it will, there will be this sort of jittery thing where you're supposed to, I think, because I'm not sure I ever completely mastered it, which it was never a huge setback. Did I mention, if you fail, if you press the wrong direction during one of the sprint sections, you might die on the spot and have to do that over. And they're not so long that it's like a problem, but it helps to make it intense. Yeah. I think there might be more times where your character can die in this one compared to the first, but I could be wrong about that. It's possible I just noticed it more. Anyway, yeah, basically, there's these two halves of a square. And I think the idea is that you press the mouse button when, LMB, when you are very close, when they're the closest, and then it might like ask you, okay, now move the mouse in this direction. And I gotta admit, there were times where I thought, well, I mean, I did the thing that I was supposed to, and it still didn't completely work. It was not a source of like irritation or something. It just, I guess what I'm saying is, it is possible that I'm describing it wrong, or it's also just maybe there were times where it's supposed to fail at first to make it feel more earned when it worked. I couldn't say for sure. But certainly, in theory, it is a good idea. And it's possible it's one of those things where, like, I believe these games were also released for console. I wouldn't rule out that it plays better on console for that particular thing. Now, this does have a... so when you play the first season on PC, you can choose between the four... when you choose one of the four dialogue options, you can just press one of the first four number keys on the keyboard. That was removed here, and I will admit at first I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about it, but I think the idea is that they don't want you to, it's a way to make it even more intense of a, I think there might also be more decisions where you have very little time to choose. And yeah, ultimately, I think it really, really worked. And I think, yeah, so as far as saving goes, it wasn't really a problem for me when I played season 1, but there were, in that one, there are times where you might have to play for, I think the longest I went was 30 minutes in a row before it saves the game. And this time, I don't think there was any that were longer than maybe 8 minutes. Maybe at least once where it was like 15, but oh wait, was there one at 25, or was that because I screwed something up? I forget. But they definitely, a lot of them are very close to each other. The autosave points. And yeah, this is very much like you can really dip in and out, and it's very appreciated for someone like me who has to rest their wrists more frequently than, yeah. But it also, like, I wouldn't rule out there might be people who are like, they make at least one really major decision and then it saves and they're like, you know what, I need a break from this, and I do think that works really, really well. And it is one of those games where that's something, honestly, I wouldn't mind if every game that has like checkpoint saves did this. Just like have the icon, so we can see that it's saving. Have it somewhere on the screen. I think that does cover. So the yeah, the in some ways the atmosphere is even more sad and harsh this time around. The graphics are improved, and yeah, the sound side continues to be like, holy crap. There's some actors here that I was very, very happy to get to hear in something. And yeah, I think, so as far as puzzles go, I would say this is at least a little easier than season 1. And the yeah, so the sprinting sections can provide some challenge. I wouldn't necessarily say that other than that it is particularly challenging to play. Excuse me. It is just it's hard on you emotionally because of the decisions you're forced to make. And but yeah, continues to be extremely engaging. Like, if my wrist still allowed for it, I think I would be playing these like in a day each. The way that I used to, like, I remember, what's it called? BioShock 2, around the same length as this. I think maybe Fear 2. I think those were games that I just, started in the morning, was done by evening, and yeah. I think, right, as far as achievements go, I think I know I got all of them. I think this is one of the ones where you get all of them if you play all the way through it, which, some people like, some people dislike. And I think there are still occasionally, I really only ran into like visual glitches, graphics glitches, but yeah, occasionally a character that we're like, is that character going to be okay? Suddenly they're like invisible or something. And yeah, they're continuing to do a really great job coming up with settings that make sense for, yeah, where it takes place, and the, what's the word? Let's see. It's right on the tip of my tongue. are compelling for the player. And yeah, the level design continues to be really strong, and the environmental storytelling is really solid. Like, so much is communicated just by the things you come across and such. I think that does cover. Yeah. I rate this 8 genuinely devastating decisions made in a world overrun by zombies out of 10. Yeah, the world in this still very much feels not unlike how Trump tries to make Democratic run cities in America sound, to, despite the fact that a number of them are, yeah, there's way more homicides in some of the red states. And we know Trump is just doing it so he can justify sending in the American military on U.S. soil, which is against the law, but he really has his heart set on fascism, so we're going to have to fight him until he is removed from office, which should obviously be with no violence, if at all possible. If you haven't already, I strongly recommend watching the Lee Miller video on the Minnesota daycare scandal. I forget the exact name, and my wrists are too fucked to check right now, but I am fairly confident it has Minnesota and daycare in the title. So as I record this, I don't know that she's made more than one video on it, but if she's made more than one, I'm sure the other one's also really excellent. Very even-handed. That's one of the things I love about being on the left. We are so capable of being honest. Like, yeah, there are aspects of that story that don't make every leftist look amazing, and we're not going to fix that by pretending it isn't so. Now, yes, so we're going to get into the thoughts section. So yes, from here on out, I am spoiling everything about the entire second season of the game. So, don't say I didn't warn you. I guess I'll try to keep it more or less chronological. So I'm going to start with, so having you play as Clem, who, by the way, like, fantastic voice acting. Like, she really does, like, she ages up the voice, because, like, by the time, after Omid is dead, we skip ahead, what was it, 16 months or something? I mean, is she like 11 by now? Because let's see, she turned 9 in the, I think she's approaching age 11, at least. Close to it. Possibly just past it. Yeah, you don't want her to sound exactly the same as the 9-year-old version of her. Besides which, in addition to years, of just like basic physical biological aging, we also have the fact that, in this world, like, it's like dog years. It feels like, yeah. But yeah, having us play as her, it's one of those decisions that is like simultaneously like, oh, right, of course, but also just inspired. I already talked about how she's more vulnerable, like, given her, yeah, she's obviously not going to be able to, like, close to the end of season 1, you as Lee are walking through all these, walkers, and every so often, you'll chop one to death. That's not going to happen with Clementine, And the, I think that, but yeah, I guess I think it makes more sense for me to talk about it over the course of, so I'll try to remember, because that's obviously, one of the main things is Clementine in this world without Lee, and like for a little while alone, after you get separated from Krista, like you get to play with the dog briefly, but then it fucking attacks you. And yeah, like you are actually completely on your own, and in a way, and that's something I think, so I think one of the things, to be fair to the hub, in the review, when I talk about hub area, for those who are unsure, what I mean is the part where you're in the pharmacy, I think it was, when you first meet Larry and Lily, and you're there for a while because you have to get pills for Larry. And once you get the pills, he punches you in the face, and then you move on. And after that, they do less of the, that is, from what I recall, at least, the longest, the hub area you return to the most. And the, I think what works well about it is that you spend a while trying to get the medication for Larry, and you're genuinely worried, is he going to make it? And the fact that it takes longer really makes you feel that. And it also makes you feel more tied to the group. And in this one, they're more interested in, like, every so often the group gets taken away. You spend time away from the various groups that you join, and the, yeah. And when you're alone in the first game, it's like, well, I got to do something on my own, and then I'll return to where, the rest of the group is. And in this one, you actually spend time with no group, and it's possible that other branches are different, but I never saw Krista again after the initial separation. And I thought that worked really well. So yeah, one of the themes here is, can you trust this new group? I didn't. One more time, for old time's sake. And that's a big deal, because at the end of the day, that's the thing. In the first one, you're always thinking about what's going to keep Clem safe. How do I, as Lee, keep Clem safe? Basically. And then in this one, like, we're still thinking about keeping Clem safe, sure, but now we are Clem, and, spending some time alone, and then, meeting this new group. And it's not just like, because when we first meet Lily, it's a very different situation than when we first meet Luke. And, that is the closest to, there's fairly little that Carver has in common with Lily. But yeah, so we're wondering, am I okay around these people, or should I, and you have to choose between, Luke and the other new people, and then Kenny, because there's immediately a conflict there. And I think that pretty much, and yeah, so right before I started recording this, I watched the trailers for this on Steam. And I wasn't hugely surprised that they focused at least partially on, I think they said, who will you become? And they play the exchange where Carver says, we have to, keep them safe. They are weak. We are not like them. And that's the thing. Like, if we're not careful, aren't we going to end up like Carver? It ends with, are you going to let this family in? And you're in Carver's literal physical place. I love when media can do this. It, like, they're practically, like, Jane might as well look directly in the camera and say, what do you think, player? This certainly is similar to how Carver used to run this place, and said that he and Clem were very much alike and had to watch out for other people, so really, really nicely done. I think that does cover... Yeah, so when I did my video on the second video, the one where I talked spoilers about the first season, I talked about how, I felt like there's some chance that it's Krista and Omid there at the very end that Clem sees, but just the fact that she's scared and I'm scared for her says a lot, like it's, yeah. So the opening of this just about confirms, yeah, it was Krista and Omid, and yeah, you're just, yeah, you go to this bathroom and then in walks, yeah, this other young woman, and yeah, guns are drawn, and she shoots Omid, who was one of the most gentle souls in the entire first season. He gets to swear, and yeah, they don't make, at least in my branch, they did not make a huge deal out of it, but yeah, I mean, we can tell in between Omid getting shot and there's a time skip there. Krista did not, yeah. So there's a couple of options. Maybe Krista, it's possible she miscarried. It's possible that she induced an abortion. It's not impossible that she gave birth and the baby died. Honestly, maybe it's just me. I got the sense that without Omid, she really just did not feel comfortable bringing a child into this world. So she, found a way to induce an abortion, which, like, yeah, that is an option. There are ways to do that, even if you don't have a huge amount of resources. If you have access to just something that can. It's not like they're building a rocket ship or something. And she's definitely harder. There was already some hardening in the first season, but after Omid dies, that's it. And let's see, I think that brings us to, and so immediately, it's one of the first lines is, oh right, I wanted to talk about my decisions. I tried talking her down, tried to convince her to lower the gun by appealing to her in the public bathroom. But yeah, let's see, yeah, so Clem talks about how cold it is, and then Krista says, just wait till we get to Wellington. And by the end of the game, we have indeed gotten to Wellington, and it is indeed extremely cold. And then it turns out it wasn't even quite enough, so nicely done on, setup and payoff there. And yeah, I tried to, make Krista, try to keep her optimistic, but she was not having it. She shut it down. And yeah, so I have to get the fire going, and I did indeed burn. Well, let's see. I think I tried to keep at least one of the photos. I think I set fire to something else. I forget exactly what, but I tried to set fire to the thing that had the least, what's it called? Sentimental value. And I think that brings us to when, so some guys show up and, grab Krista, and I managed to get away, but, fall in the water, and yeah. And the, let's see, yes, in my branch, I do not know if Krista made it, and the, I have to admit, I didn't bring her up that much to, wow, maybe I didn't really. No, I feel like I brought her up at least a little bit to some of the other characters, but yeah, it was each time that there was a chance for me to bring her up, I felt like one of the other choices just made more sense of yeah. I think on at least one occasion I was worried that the group that hadn't really accepted me yet were going to be like, oh, she's going to be a burden. She's going to complain about this other person, and we don't have the resources to go find them. Now, I think, yeah, so yeah, you end up on the by these tents, and the dog comes across, and ultimately I considered frisbeeing with the dog more than once. I think I was thinking we'll do it again after eating, but we're hungry, so both Clem and the dog. And then I offered the dog some, and it like sort of knocked the can out. So yeah, um, I forget if that was a choice, but my Clem certainly, yeah. That was another in the trailer. There was like a hashtag my Clementine, which that is very clever. I can just picture. I do not use shitter. I didn't even before it, became full of Nazis, but I can 100% see people like tweeting out, hashtag my Clementine shot Kenny or something, so yeah. And there was also another one that was like hashtag I am Clementine, which is also a good way to, yeah, I will definitely say, like, there was no character that I wanted, that I was as, if it had been any other character, like I can imagine it would still have been cool if I was playing as Krista O'Mead or Kenny or something, but I do think it makes a ton of sense that it is Clem. Yes, so yeah, so the dog, yeah, my Clem said, hey, be careful with the food, and then the dog bit me, and I had to. This game, these developers, they fucking know. They know how to get to us, because, like, forcing us to take out that dog, like, obviously there was no other way, like, a hungry dog is going to keep attacking until the, you know, whatever it's attacking is no longer keeping it from its food. That is just, I mean, there are real life cases where actual dogs have been put down because they attacked over food. But yeah, let's see. That's when the I think the yeah. So the let's see. I think I had to run away from some walkers there, and that's when I meet. So let's see. I have to admit, I struggle to remember his name, but Nick's uncle, I think it was, Nick himself and Luke are there, and yeah, they, yeah, at first, yeah, there's a little while where I think Luke is carrying me, maybe it's Nick, and then they see the bite and they think it's a walker. That's such a clever, yeah, and yeah, they talk about, well, we gotta bring her back, but we, the doctor will decide what to do, and he does not accept that it is a dog bite, and yeah. The person I tried appealing to was Luke, and he said, oh, listen, it's not up to me. You have my sympathy, I won't lie about your chances. And I think yeah, I gotta say, when they locked me in a fucking shed without tending to the bite, I was genuinely thinking, well, fuck. And that's just the kind of thing, like, you couldn't picture that really happening in the first one. And part of that was that Lee was there to protect her, and there was also, other members of the group did also care about her. But the yeah, I will say the part where I sneak out of the shed and get the equipment and sew up. That was one of the strongest parts for me of this entire game. There was a lot of amazing stuff after as well, and I think, yeah, I have to admit when there was that part where you could open the door a little bit, and you had to close it. The screen got slightly redder gradually to let you know, hey, if you keep this up, they're going to spot you. It didn't look like I could keep it just open enough to like hear and see a little bit without being seen. So I only I think 2 or 3 times I let it turn red for a few seconds, and then leave, and then maybe start over, and that's so it's yeah. Um, anyway, I mean, I think it's also one of those things. I'm not sure if there was much of anything. I guess I could have kept just on and off, but anyway, I wouldn't rule out that it is basically just there to say, hey, they're all in there, so this is when you have your chance to. But yeah, and yeah, sewing. Holy shit, that iodine, I think it was, some kind of to rinse, and yeah, the fact that the bottle, she accidentally drops it, and some of it goes on the floor, which, like, during this particular circumstance, you really don't want to run out of that stuff. And the sewing, holy shit, yeah. And then they come in, and there's the oh right, and there's also a point where Walker attacks inside the shed, and that was also really cool. I appreciate the way that, so for when you play as Lee in the first season, you kill numerous walkers like that. Not like constantly, but over the course of it, you kill a decent amount with a short range weapon. But here it's much more rare, and it took a lot more. And I thought that was a really great way to really underline, hey, you are frail. Watch out. And yeah, I think it was maybe okay, there's definitely too many names. I'm not going to be able to remember everyone. Rebecca, I think, was her name. I think she was the one who said, did she steal from us? Or did you steal from us? Something like that. And let's see. I think, yeah, and I if I recall correctly, I answered, I did, and I'm sorry. And I wonder if I hadn't said that, they would have made a bigger deal out of the fact that I spilt some on the floor. But yeah, and the let's see. Right now, like with the first one, I understood where everyone was coming from. I hated Carver, and that means the game was doing its job right. And some of the others, some of the people working for him. Troy can go to hell and stay there, and that was very cathartic. I quite appreciated that, and Jane didn't even finish him off. She left him there because, like, yeah, walkers like, something that's, just about, they like to kill their food. They are more interested in something that they can, catch and kill, rather than something that's already dead when they get to it. So yeah, that was in real life, I would not be in favor of it, but in media, I can appreciate the catharsis. I think that brings us to, yeah. So they then we have the, yeah. I get to, Clem gets to eat, and Rebecca shows up, and I think I was just like, I think it was the fact that she was like, you're still here, so I was in a little bit of a mood. So I said, if it's not Alvin's, whose baby is it? Which, like, I feel a little bad about, especially like later on we do understand why, to be clear, I was not trying to imply that there was something, like in real life, I do not think, okay, so there is such a thing as ethical non-monogamy. It is about whether your partner knows that you are not monogamous. And if that had turned out to be the case, then obviously there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. And ultimately, we find out, she didn't have much of a choice. Like, it was essentially rape. Carver raped her because we know what happens when people say no to him. I was just trying to troll her a little bit. I wasn't trying to, really upset her. So I did feel bad when she was upset. And I was very happy to be able to repair the relationship later. I think that does bring us to... So yeah, I'm afraid I forget his name, but Sarita's dad, Sarah's dad, asked me to distract Sarah and told me Sarah isn't like you. She's not, I wasn't entirely sure on if she was quote unquote just naive or if she was could she have some sort of, I don't know, maybe learning disability, or maybe she's on the spectrum or something. There's definitely, they did a really good job characterizing her. And yeah, immediately I was like, oh, okay, so now I'm Lee and she's my Clem. Gotcha. And I don't know if it's possible to keep her alive through the entire game. I wasn't able to, and I did feel bad about that. I don't know. It's possible that's where she's more like Duck. But yeah. Anyway, I think that brings us to the... Yeah, so, I'm supposed to help keep her mind off things. And yeah, I tried to prepare her, as Clem, I tried to prepare Sarah, similar to how as Lee, I tried to prepare Clem. I really appreciated the writing. So yeah, I teach her, about the gun, and repeat Lee's words, don't be afraid of it. It's just a thing. And Sarah's like, what does that mean? And Clem's like, I don't know. Because Lee never said what that means. It's just, and that's so, it's very true. A lot of kids will just repeat the words of adults if they're teaching someone else about something, even though they might not fully understand what is, so that was great. And yeah, I did take a Polaroid of her because I didn't think about there could be harm to it, and then Carver, of course, fucking found it. And yeah, it was really great when, so there's a figure moving outside. Oh, right, and yeah, they're at the start when it was just Clem and Sarah. I tried to... so I already mentioned I helped her with the gun, but I did also try to maintain at least some of her innocence. So, I said, yes, we're friends, rather than we're not the same age. Yeah, I think those were the same question, but yeah. And yeah, as soon as Sarah was like, Dad's back, because she saw a figure moving, I, as the player, and clearly Clem, we immediately thought, I'm not sure that's her father, but Sarah doesn't think about it, because, yeah, she's not, and by now, we know that it was 16 months between, yeah, it must have been, over a year and a half by that point, since, excuse me, didn't realize I was as cold as I maybe am. I think that was the only one, but if not, I do have... Yeah, we're gonna see. Anyway, the yeah, let's see. Yeah, so Carver, comes up, and yeah, I encourage Sarah to hide, and I tried locking the door, but Carver pushed too fast, and I tried keeping things vague with him, and yeah, I lied about how many there were to try to, you know, yeah. Um, Once the knife, I will admit I considered it, but ultimately I did not go for the knife. Though when he picked it up, I did tell him I'll take it and put it where it belongs. Primarily to get him out of thinking of using it on Clem to get information. But ultimately he did put it back himself. But yeah, that was really clever because I have to admit I was sitting there thinking there's no way that I would be able to stop him or even slow him down enough that he wouldn't be a huge threat to Clem and Sarah until, because they might not get back right away, so yeah. And yeah, I will say, when he said, are you sure you can trust the people here, I did think, I mean, I don't know, but right now I don't, do I have a choice? Am I going to have a choice later, And I really appreciated the way that both Carver and Luke said the most important thing is to be able to trust the people you're around, So genuinely, like, Carver wasn't originally evil. Like, he genuinely wanted to, yeah, so very nicely done on that. And of course, like, goddamn, getting to hear Michael Madsen. It's been so long since I watched. And holy shit, I think the most recent time that I saw something that I hadn't already was the first time when I went to the theater to watch The Hateful Eight. I think that was the most recent time that yeah, incredible talent. But let's see. I think that does bring us to, yeah, I will admit, when they came back, and Sarah's father was like, why did you take the photo? I was like, come on, man. So I did tell him, you told me to distract her. And I did feel bad that she was like, I thought we were friends, And I think that's when we all left for the, yeah, to put some distance between. And that's like, holy shit, like they did genuinely try to get away from Carver and he still managed to catch up to them. Damn. But yeah, we get to the bridge and oh shit, god damn it, how did I forget? Obviously before that we have Nick. And yeah, I will admit I chose to save Nick rather than his family member. And I forget if that was my choice or if my Clem just did that on her own. But yeah, as my Clem said to Nick, he was bitten, and yeah, it seemed like he was maybe a little bit in denial about it. Yeah. But yeah, Nick was very unhappy with my decision and ended up getting very drunk. And I managed to talk him out of it, encourage him to yeah. I didn't yell at him. I believe that was one of the options. And I think, doesn't that pretty much get us to, let's see, where, yeah, so and yeah, I was genuinely, until Kenny showed up, I was thinking that Nick was the new Kenny, and I think that was on purpose. I think the developers knew that, if we have people think, well, what if no, this is just like Kenny, and then Kenny is really back, so it's already on our mind. Yeah, very nicely done. So we cross the bridge, and let's see. Yeah, cross the bridge. I hope to die, and let's see. I think it was the. I'm struggling a little to remember the exact order, but yeah, love the part where Luke starts to fall through, and yeah, managed to help him out of there and take out a walker or two. And yeah, we got to at the bridge. We had the other guy, and and so in part because I wanted to fuck with Luke a little bit, and because I felt like it was what would best disarm de-escalate the situation. When the guy asked, "Are you two assholes?" I yelled back, "Well, I'm not an asshole." And it seemed to work, and Luke was okay with it, and it is, I mean, I'm sorry, dude, but you know, you were part of the committee. You said you were on my side, but you were still part of the committee that got me locked up when I was bitten. So yeah. And the let's see. Yeah, so I tried to de-escalate, but ultimately Nick did shoot the other guy. I think I called out to Nick to put the gun down or something like that, and yeah, he didn't. And ultimately, yeah, the guy dies from the shot, falls off the whatever, he dies. And so yeah, we go in there and we do find the food that was promised, and the or was it water, some kind of, yeah. And yeah, I find the knife, and then we get up to the actual lodge, and I think let's see if I can recall. I think the next thing was when the two groups met, and it was me walking out from behind them. That was what got Kenny to loosen up, and it's very nicely done. I will say, the moment that I realized he was back, mentally I'm like, could he really have made it? But I mean, when I think about it, it's not like he was, like if he had been bit, I'd be like, there's no way, because Lee was bit and he turned within very short time, but yeah, I mean, Kenny, under the right circumstances, is a real survivor, and yeah, like, so we have yeah, and that helps make both pieces, both groups willing to listen to the other, because both trust Clem, or such as it is. And I think that might cover the, let's see, where does that get us? We end up at the, God, my fucking wrists are sore. Let's see. Yeah. So we yeah. There's the thing about, well, you have to, put your weapons over there if you want to come in, and then there's the thing about, oh shit, the knife is in the backpack, and the guy that's from the bridge is that, yeah. So very nicely done. And I let's see. I think there's at least one thing in there, so I'll briefly, yeah. Okay, I'll just briefly note. I told him the truth. Yes, that is that knife, and he, I was a little worried that he was going to be like, you killed him, but he did just need to know. I could imagine if you lie and pretend, then he might be more upset because you're denying him the truth. But it's really nicely done, and I love the way that he is essentially, like, we the audience are encouraged to think it would be great if he was right, but he's perhaps a little bit too naive, and yeah, I was worried that finding out that we had gotten the guy killed, his partner killed, that would send him over the edge, but he did just need to know for sure. I put the star on the tree to cheer up Sarah, to make her feel like things, there's at least some normalcy left. I told Sarita that Kenny's the same as I remember him. In part, it was about 50-50 that I felt like, yeah, I feel like that's the closest to the truth. He's not that, like, super different. And also, I was thinking, I really want to reassure her. And yeah, I chose to sit by Kenny because he didn't lock me in a fucking shed when we first met. And they did a really good... Okay, I'm giving him a little bit of a hard time, but obviously, yeah, the developers needed for us to feel, Luke is not Lee, and that's important. I already mentioned there's a little bit of similarity between Luke and Lily, but also some differences. But yeah, it's not like we're just... There were times where I was like, is Luke the new Lee? But then there were also times where he made a mistake that Lee would never have made, I mean, I guess unless the player controlling him is like trying to see how bad they can make things without getting game over or something. Anyway, yeah, so what was the other thing? Let's see. I think that does bring us to... But yeah, I felt like one thing they did really well here was what would happen with Kenny if, A, things kept getting wrong. I mean, he loses another entire, yeah, he loses his wife. And, I mean, he thinks that he lost AJ there at the end, like he loses another family unit. And, that's one of the things. And B, what if Lee wasn't there to help soothe Kenny? Because, I was very careful to keep, to pull Kenny back from the edge over the course of season 1. And Luke is not that person, and there's only so much Clem can do on her own. I also really appreciated the theme of, both Kenny and Bonnie said to my Clem, you think just because you're a little girl, you don't have to be responsible, you can just get people killed, and we're supposed to be okay with it, which, that's the thing. Is she still... She's obviously not the same little girl, who is afraid of spiders in the first, when we meet, the thing about, oh, be careful, there could be spiders in your hair, little missy, and he's like, oh, spiders, she's not that little girl anymore. But is she a little girl at all? Is she growing up too fast? And how? Yeah, I think that does get us to... So yeah, the let's see. Yeah, we see Bonnie lurking around, and I think she was the first character from 400 Days to pop up. And yeah, at first I thought that she, so if I understand correctly, basically, because there are several members, several of the playable characters in 400 Days pop up here, and now they're working for Carver. And I mean, Bonnie, we are able to turn. We never find out about the hippie or Vince. Let's see. The one who recruited them has turned, is on board with Carver. So basically, I don't know if Carver was always the leader. He wasn't the voice on the other end of the radio in 400 Days. I'm quite confident about that. But yeah, the they had good intentions. They wanted it to be, and he, maybe Carver was in control. Maybe he took control and he turned because he felt like, yeah, I already mentioned his philosophy. But the yeah, about Bonnie, I said, look at her, she's not dangerous. I didn't say to check for weapons or any of the others. And yeah, when when the guy there gave food and such, I was also thinking that is a lot. And, ultimately, that is part of why Bonnie turns. She appreciates, oh, wow, it is still possible to live like that in this world. I really loved the part where I had to climb up and, be a lookout and then climb down, and, it was dangerous and such. And I think that does bring us to the part where, so all of the, Carver and his people show up, and we are overwhelmed. And I will say, like, I appreciate that it wasn't longer, because I do think that could have gotten, a bit much, but I appreciated that it also wasn't over immediately. We basically immediately start sabotaging and working on a way to get away from House. But yeah, like, there were, I don't know, there's maybe an hour of gameplay there from when you're first captured to when you escape from House, and I think that really worked. I was not expecting that, and it's essentially like that could somewhat have happened if we hadn't realized about the dairy in the first season. If they managed to continue fooling us. I think that covers. So when Troy said, "Did everything come out all right?" You're lucky that Clem was not armed and I was not able to shoot, because holy shit, what a fucking creep. My God. Yeah. And right, I like the part where, let's see, you see like a butterfly and you like reach out for it and it flies off. So there is still beauty in this world, and she still wants to protect it. Clem, I mean. And I tried talking Kenny out of fighting back in the truck, but he refused to listen, and obviously didn't get him anywhere. Oh, right. So when Carver is, I'm trying to sneak around. I'm trying to, keep hidden from, there's some shooting. Like I tried to find the exact right moment, but ultimately, we weren't able to stop Carver like that. And it was so fucked up when he's like breaking dial and fingers, and he shot that one person. Yeah. And so we arrive at House, and I have to admit, I helped Sarah with her work, and then I can't believe Carver just fucking murdered Reggie. I am really vibing with Kumail Nanjiani in stuff. I really want to see. Holy shit! Come to think of it, I think it's this, Eternals, and Men in Black International, I think, are the only things I've seen. I'd like to watch more that he's in, and play more games that he does voice for. I was really impressed with. So he does have. There's some dramatic stuff to his character in Eternals as well, and he's one of those. Let's say, I forget if he is a comedian first and foremost, or it's just that he's taken some comedic roles. But I remember when Eternals came out, some people were talking about, can he act? Is he just funny? And I've been quite happy with it in these. But and I tried to not fuck things up for him, because I felt bad about, he drank the Kool-Aid, or Flavor Aid, as Genetically Modified Skeptic recently pointed out in a video talking about cults. But let's see. I think it was called "The Religious Rights Tactics Haven't Changed in Thousands of Years," something like that. Anyway, I think that covers that part. When Bonnie gave me a jacket, I said that it's cool. I didn't comment on whether or not it's, somebody else said that's a really ugly jacket, and it's very nicely done because, like, yeah, that's in part because Bonnie realized, oh, Clem is actually nice. Like, it seems like she kind of got to the point where she just thought, oh, but everybody's out for themselves. I think this is a good enough time to say it's possible that he was in their background and I just missed him, but I don't think in my branch that I even saw, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name. I mean no disrespect, but the young male African American from 400 Days. And, yeah, as others have noted, the ones that you do meet, like, other than Bonnie, their characterization is not that deep. Like, I recognize Vince. I recognize that hippie guy whose name also escapes me. I don't mean hippie as a negative, by the way, just descriptive. Yeah, like, if I had not played 400 Days, like, hypothetically, let's say that I played this and then later 400 Days, I'd be like, oh, right. Actually, I might not even have remembered, because they made no impression based on just playing this, I would say. And yeah, I would say I get the idea of having us take on a character in 400 Days that was not in the first one and is not playable here in the second one. I already mentioned in my video on 400 Days, I think he should have been maybe one character for the entire duration, and it wouldn't feel so rushed and short. And I think it should have been Bonnie. I think that could have been compelling. And ultimately, like, I think I would have, I would still have cared about Bonnie even if I didn't if I didn't play as her in 400 Days. So yeah. Anyway, that brings us to the. So yeah. I thought they did a good job with Mike and Jane's introductions. Like, Jane's off there by herself, and we're not sure if we trust. Let's see, wasn't she the one? She's like staring, and Mike says, "Shut up! I'm trying to get some sleep. We have to work from early." And for the entire, as soon as we escape, he's trying to make it up. He's trying to, yeah. And when Luke says, "I just don't trust him yet," I was very torn between. I can kind of understand why. Yeah, he was part of Carver, and then going like, yeah, I'll bet you don't, because you don't really trust new people, do you? And yeah, that is, of course, a major theme. Again, they're at the end of the game. You're asked, do you trust these new people? And I will talk about my decision about that when I get there chronologically. But yeah, I thought it worked really well that, so we find out about the radio and there's music and how do I fix the music? And I have to do the thing with the, yeah. And attracting all of them. And right, and I tried to help Luke, and I forget what I said to Troy when he found me near Luke. Not when Luke was discovered. But I tried to tell him. I tried to distract him somehow. And I think, yeah. So there's the part with the walkie-talkie. And yeah, I tried to tell Carver I was the one who took it, but Kenny, takes the blame. And yeah, the thing about, 1, 2, 3, fucker. And yeah, that's another part of why Kenny snaps, because Carver said, these are the terms, and then he violates the terms that he set. And it's such a power move. He's asserting dominance. He's saying, you can't just do what you want around me. You follow my rules or I will, he kept hitting him for so long. Like, I was genuinely not sure if Kenny was gonna make it out of there. It's just like, keep kicking him. And yeah, I will admit the first time I hesitated too long, Carver shot me. But the second time I got it. And yeah. Let's see. I think that does... Right, when there's a part where, they ask Clem to go deal with the, to attract walkers, I think it is. And, one of the options was, why do I have to go, or something like that. I didn't choose that. I chose one that was, because I was thinking, like, if I'm not careful, they're going to abandon me. And later, Bonnie, Mike, and Arvo did try to abandon me and Kenny. So, yeah. And Jane and AJ. But yeah, I think that brings us to... Yeah, and so, Kenny decides he's going to beat Carver to a pulp. And I chose not to stay. I walked away. And yeah, that was a big turning point for Kenny. And yeah, we had the part where, there's so many fucking walkers, and I didn't chop off Sarita's arm. I chopped off I chopped the walker. I was thinking, maybe there's some chance, but yeah. Ultimately she didn't make it. And I think that pretty much brings us... Right, I like that. So Jane apparently talked to Troy, and Troy thought, oh, I just thought you wanted out of the cage. I didn't realize you wanted to leave house. Really? You thought she wanted to stay, but just go sightseeing or something? Like, yeah. And, yeah, so that brings us to the... Yeah, Kenny is furious. He blames me, at least partially, for the death of Sarita. And I spent a little time alone with Jane, and I thought they did a really great job, because she's sort of a dark mirror version of Lee, because, like, she is trying to keep Clem safe. She's trying to prepare her for the harsh realities of this world. But she's not, like... both of them have regrets. And right, I think I've pretty much already said, Carver is a complete asshole. He chooses evil. He doesn't have to be a fucking dictator. And Troy is a piece of shit. Again, chooses to... Yeah, there's simply no reason for him to be so unpleasant. But I do understand how they got there, and everybody else at least has times where I'm like, okay, I don't... That's not the wrong thing. I just, if only you never did the wrong thing. But, it's one of those things, if you're the player character, you maybe get to never do the wrong thing. But a lot of video game characters, they're more dynamic if they do the wrong thing, if they're not the player character. Sometimes that they are. Anyway, but yeah, both have regrets. But Lee, he's trying to make... he's trying to atone and redeem himself and be better, and Jane, at the end of the day, like, she's okay with being by herself. If it's yeah, she feels like, she doesn't think that she is why, and I'm not necessarily saying that she is, why her sister gave up. And she thinks some people just give up and there's nothing you can do, and Kenny's a liability. But yeah, I thought that worked really well. And she did teach me about the knee. I really loved the line. I think I actually quoted in one of my videos on something else. So the knee is like halfway down the leg. And Mike took it well, you know, we're razzmatazz, and the but yeah, you know, I tried to tell Jane, you know, I felt like if I push too hard, she's gonna up and leave. But and she did try, but I also didn't. Yeah. She did leave at one point. She just comes back, but the but I also, you know, didn't want to go too far in her direction either. Um, I did not tell her that she was really mean to her sister. I said, "Is that what having sisters like?" You know, but I'm just asking questions. I think that does bring us to the yeah. So there's the part where we try to find a place for Rebecca to give birth, and we yeah. There's that part, and the let's see, the door is opened, and yeah, you know, someone approaches, and yeah, when so Arvo, when he, you know, I told him I'm just a little girl, you know, which, you know, Clem is. I definitely saw some betrayal in his eyes when, you know, because like technically that's not a lie, but it's also not the entire truth. But I worried that he was gonna shoot me if I told him, you know, about, because at least one of the options was basically to threaten him. And I thought they did a really great job with Arvo because, like, yeah, some of the time it seems like it does boil down to English isn't his first language, you know? Like, he's not trying, he comes across as, you know, untrustworthy, maybe lying and such. But, you know, I mean, he said there is a house and there is food there. There, I mean, those are technically accurate statements. He didn't say that the house was fully built. You know, and that's the kind of thing that you might not say as well. Like, okay, if you go to, if you're a tourist in another country, are you gonna get every single little detail 100% accurate, or are you just gonna give a you know, basic description of, you know, like, and he's probably also just scared of Kenny. You know, he's like, okay, what can I say to get him to not hit me? Oh, I know where there's food, you know. Yeah, and I think at that point the food had already been mentioned, so he was just saying, I will take you to the food that you know about. And but yeah, uh, I did take the medication. I felt bad because I think, you know, so let's see. I guess in my branch, I was never entirely sure if he lied about his sister needing medication, because she didn't complain of pain when he's, you know, but he did have a sister. But yeah, I kept it. I felt bad, you know, and I understood why he was upset. I did not want Jane to shoot him. I did say, I thought you were going to shoot him, and then she said, what, did you want me to? Which, that was not how I meant for that to come across, but I don't know, maybe she was just being defensive or something. I think, oh, right, to be clear, I do, in real life, I think Jane really should have been nicer to her sister. But, I mean, that kind of goes to show, like, even before the zombie apocalypse, she was already kind of hard on people close to her, you know. I think that brings us to the part where, let's see. Yeah, so we get everyone into the, yeah, into that little area. And, you know, the walkers surrounded because Luke and Jane they didn't have time for kissing, but they had time for something else. And, yeah, that was, God damn it. So oh shit. By that point, I already found yeah, I'll just briefly talk about it. So yeah, I found Luke and Sarah, you know, and yeah, I managed to convince her. I think I slapped her to get her to snap out of it, which again I would not do in real life. But yeah, and it was great when there's that thing about, well, we need something, we need to block the door. Okay, we'll use this the piece of furniture, and it's like, okay, how do we get all the way up there? And it's like, we're gonna have to bring that thing back, and that was a really well done, because goddamn, because immediately that means that it's on our mind, and also that we realize how dangerous this is. I feel like it is that they're giving the player agency, and it's in a situation that's similar to Ben fucking up and pulling out the little axe thing, that was blocking the door. In Yeah, but the yeah, shit. Where does that get us? There was definitely yeah. I thought this generally did better at, like, I never felt like stuck. There were a couple of times playing the first one where I wasn't entirely sure what I was expected to next. I kind of ended up just trying everything, and getting there through that. But yeah, this time, but yeah, I managed to get her out of there, and yeah. So the when the walkers all come to yeah, we fought off some of them, and then there was that thing about, like, well, we have to, let's see, crap, what was the other, I honestly don't remember what we were trying to accomplish, but there was a thing where we it was the cannon, it accidentally, and I thought that it would work, but it instead took the entire thing with, and Sarah fell down there, and I almost said to Jane that she didn't even properly try, because that was definitely what I was personally, as the player, feeling. But I was like, if she fucks off, we are completely fucked. Like, she is cynical, but she is one of the most focused and capable members of the group. I did give Rebecca Oxy, and when Kenny said, is that okay to give to a pregnant lady, I was thinking, like, I don't fucking know, but, like, listen, do you have an epidural in your back fucking pocket? Shut the fuck up. And ultimately she also, she said, I'll take it, and and Kenny saying, babies know how to be born, which, like, I mean, to some extent, yes, but circumstances can, yeah. Anyway, let's see. That's the, yeah. I think I tried fence sitting during the discussion, because I was definitely thinking, I was thinking we can't lose Jane, but I was also not. I didn't just come out and say that Jane was, like, that what Jane and Luke did wasn't fucked up, because that would have been ridiculous. And that was also, I didn't want to risk setting off Kenny. That by this point he had already yelled at me over Sarita. I think that brings us to the, let's see. Yeah, yes. So Jane, sneaks off, and at first I didn't tell Luke the truth, but pretty quickly, okay, it's saying there might be problems with the, yeah, hopefully it's not too bad equality, I think. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, I think I just said, I don't know, Jane, I don't know where Jane is, or something like that, but yeah. Right, that's when we get to, so yeah, Arvo is, yeah, Arvo and the others surround us, and I thought they did a really great job of gradually escalating the tension, and yeah, I forget if that was even a choice or if that was just something you had to do to progress, but I did shoot Rebecca because I was thinking, if AJ fucking dies. And And I do think, that's I thought they balanced Kenny really well, because like every so often, I mean, coming up with Alvin Jr. or AJ, or was it somebody else's idea, and but he consistently applies it. Let's see, the yeah. So that brings us to, yeah. So the yeah, people shooting at each other, and let's see, yeah, we managed to take over the situation, take Arvo hostage, and yeah, like getting across the ice. I do understand why Kenny thought that Arvo set us up. And I told the others, we'll make it across the ice if we don't clump together. And it said they will remember that. And I think that might be why Bonnie was very angry with me. She blamed me for Luke's death, and yeah. Uh, I listened to Luke. I thought that he was that he that he was that he would be able to save himself. Um, if the yeah. So I covered him rather than going to help him, and that was also really intense when both of us are underwater and I am pulled. I make it out, and because of the fire, we're able to. I make it. But I think that covers. I feel like there's at least one more thing that I wanted to talk about. Yeah. So with Kenny, yeah, I help him fix the car, and I say that I think we should go back to. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely took issue with the idea of going to Wellington. And he said let's sleep on it, and so ultimately they, them trying to sneak away during the night, they didn't get the car. So I called out to them. I didn't draw my gun. I didn't tell Clem to draw her gun. The game did do that, and yeah, I yeah, you know, that was also really really sad. I was not able to get them. Yeah, but yeah, Bonnie and yeah, they they ran off. I did at first think that I'm not 100% sure if I was supposed to, if it was meant to be a purposeful fake out or what, but I did briefly think, until it cut back, I did think, oh, we really are going back to that part of it, because that's a long time ago. Like that's right after we left Lily, so that's like the end of episode 2 of season 1. Like when, like, by this point I think it was like episode 3 or 4 of season 2. So yeah, but it was really well done. I tried to not scare Lee with my future knowledge, but I did say, I don't think it's like a cold. And yeah, I did it. I think it really worked, because like it shows how far we've come as Clem and how far away we are from, because like that was one of the last times things felt normal. So it would make sense that she would mentally go there when she's shocked and shot. And yeah, I was sitting there thinking, did I move too far away? Did I lead Clem astray? Yeah. Let's see. I think, where does that leave us? That brings it. So yeah, in the car, yeah, there's that thing about, well, we had to go somewhere. We had to, and yeah, the conversation, and it really comes to a head. And yeah, having to choose, God, when Jane, because like, yeah, it feels like she's just trying to provoke him, saying I spy an asshole and putting her feet on the dash and stuff like that. But it also feels like he's just being an asshole, and yeah, um, it's yeah. Jane confirmed, because like technically I did. I had my Clem say that she was worried about Kenny. She doesn't know how to reach him. So Jane said, even Clementine knows, so it talks about you behind your back. And yeah, so yeah, I told him, watch the road or watch out or something like that. And yeah, the car crash, and so he goes out and and yeah, I shot one walker. After that, I tried to just steer clear. As soon as I shot the walker, there were a couple of seconds where I was sitting there thinking, tell me I didn't just accidentally fucking shoot Kenny. Because like it was really, the fog rolled in. But yeah, let's see. I think that does bring us to yeah, so Kenny Jane finds me, and she tells me, whatever you do, don't get involved. I did, I have to admit. But yeah, when Kenny thought AJ was dead, he tries to kill Jane, and she says afterwards she didn't think he would go that far. She basically thought he would be verbally abusive, maybe like move in a threatening way or something like that, but that would be it. But yeah, let's see. I think so. There's one point where it seemed like he had the upper hand. I interfered. When she had the upper hand, I didn't, but he, managed to start to take over again. And yeah, I did. I took him out, and he even thanked me. Said that it's the right thing to do, and he's been wanting it for so long, and just yeah. I think that does. Yeah. Let's see. If you haven't already watched, I'm afraid I forget exactly what it's called, but so the channel name is okay. I'm pretty sure his name is Ian Danskin, and he did a bunch of videos called something like "How to Radicalize a Normie," and he did like a breakdown of Fury Road. I'm afraid I forget his channel name right now, but he did a really solid video, which I watched, just before recording this. He talks about these first two seasons, and yeah, he had some really excellent, really compelling stuff to say about the yeah, the whole thing with Kenny and Lee and yeah. You know what? Right now, I actually don't even fucking remember if he talked about more than if he talked about more than these first two seasons. Then I stopped right after he talked about Kenny. After talked about the ending of this one. Anyway, I'm gonna start playing the third one tomorrow. It's gonna be weeks before I'm done with it, unfortunately. But yeah, I'll do it as soon as I do a video as soon as I finish that. Right now, I'm not entirely sure who you're gonna play as or exactly what they're gonna do plot wise, because like these first two seasons really form a fantastic, overall like arc. Anyway, I think that brings us Right, and to be clear, the video I'm talking about, having watched by Ian Danskin, is several years old. It's just I held off on it until so that I wouldn't be spoiled because I figured that I would eventually play this anyway. Yes, so I think that does bring us to the I will admit I was a little bit unclear. Maybe one of the other branches explains it. Why did Kenny think AJ was dead when he wasn't? Because like he seems just was he just asleep? Like surely Kenny knows the difference between asleep and dead. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So we go back to House, and there's the talk about, well, there's not that much food left, but the greenhouse is fine. There's some repairs needed to make this place, the fortress that it used to be. And then the family shows up, and yeah, there's big Kennergy there. The way that he goes is a little bit too close. He's very insistent, while the wife is a little bit more, yeah, and the kid just seems like a nice kid. I was apparently in the minority because I think it was like 20% or something, but I chose to trust the family because I'm not judging anyone who made a different choice. But I was sitting there thinking, well, how many people are we going to let die? It just, yeah. I cannot turn away a hungry child, and it's it somewhat parallels the start, where Clem was the one that they didn't trust. Yeah, they didn't trust Clem, and now you're being asked to, basically, were they right? And yeah, I think, I feel like there's at least one more thing that I really want to make sure to say. Yeah, I thought it really worked that, so, the first season ends with Clem shooting Lee, which, it's, one of the things is it's very unexpected because he was the player character. I said pretty much everything I want to say about that. I just wanted to reiterate. That was really interesting. I'm glad that they here didn't just do the same thing, because you could easily have written to, Kenny dies, or maybe you're able to redeem him, and either Kenny or Jane shoots Clem after she's been bitten, and that's it. But at that point, it's just like, okay, so we're just doing the same thing again. The player character dies after being bitten, and but the yeah, actually having the player have to make the decision. As far as I could tell, it was a decision. I don't think you have. I don't know. It's possible that it just wouldn't proceed without it. There are games where they force you to make to do something that you wish you hadn't had to do. But but yeah, even if it's not a choice, certainly it is something. It is something the player is doing. We are, yeah, we take out Kenny, and yeah, I've spent all this time like really bonding with him and really wanting him to make it, really wanting the tragedies in his life to be over, and to then have to, yeah, very, very nicely done, very, very dramatically effective, and yeah, like it's, I think that does cover, yeah, because like, they're at the end, and I appreciate that might just be my branch, maybe others had at least slightly different experience, but the, yeah, the fact that by the end, it was Clem who, has been a main character for both seasons, just not a playable one until this one, and then Jane, the realist, the one that, yeah, I was unsure if, I didn't want Clem to end up like her, But I also, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not hugely surprised that it wasn't Jane, but Mike and Bonnie who tried leaving with Arvo. And if I recall correctly, was it Arvo who shot Clem? I think it might have been. And yeah, he pointed a gun at Clem and then looked very, betrayed when, we first met, and I told him, oh, I essentially, with words, led him to believe that it was just us, that there wasn't anybody else. And then before he has a chance to really, yeah, um, to do anything, to get, like, hypothetically, if Jane hadn't showed up, maybe he would have in time lowered the gun and, yeah, I think that covers the, but yeah, I mean, part of it with the family there at the end, I was thinking, well, I mean, the guy looks like he can do hard labor to help fix this place up. The maybe his partner can help with, some, possibly not hard labor, but something else, maybe work in the greenhouse or something. And yeah, the kid can help as moral support. I was thinking, like, I mean, just Jane and me, that's also really dangerous, So I think it was really smart that it was new characters that reminded us of ones we'd met, instead of having, like, it would just not have been the same if they're at the end. Like, I mean, I think by the end of this one, by the end of my branch at least, Bonnie, I guess all three, yeah, Bonnie, Mike, and Arvo, I think all three might still be alive. Did any of them get shot during the, or was it only Clem who got shot? I'm not entirely sure, but, I believe one, two, or possibly all three of them are out there by the end of the branch. Could have been them returning, and then it would have been like, well, why wouldn't I let them in? Like, it was Kenny that was why they were, there wasn't that huge of a problem between them and yeah. I think. Oh, right. The jacket. I appreciated what Mike said about it, but I did, favor giving it to Rebecca as Clem. I mean, in real life, I would definitely have let it be Rebecca's decision. And ultimately, she did say that she, I think she said she didn't give a shit what color it was or something like that. And yeah, I can hardly wait. It's gonna be, yeah, tomorrow, early tomorrow, that I start on the 3rd. Hard to believe. I'm by now halfway through the main ones. There's 2 more seasons, and then there's the Michonne, spin-off. So, well, I guess technically that does mean I'm halfway through overall, technically, because I've played 3, because 400 days and there's 6 total. Yeah, anyway, we're getting into the weeds here. Yeah, I think that covers everything. Yeah, let's see. I feel like there was one more thing that I really wanted to make sure to say. Let's see. Have I already mentioned, I thought it worked really, really well, that there was so much of Carver's group in this, that you spend, like, I mentioned, maybe an hour of game time in, as a prisoner, that, because there's nothing quite like that in season 1. And it's the kind of thing that, it appears in various zombie media. And it is a compelling idea, I think that does cover let's see. Is there anything at all that is let's see. Oh, I don't know if it changes anything. When when Luke fell in, and there was ice that had to be, in order to try to get him out of there, I had to break the ice. I did not fire the pistol. I instead hit, I pistol whipped the ice. Because I was genuinely worried, like, what if the bullet hits him, And yeah, I wouldn't rule out, and maybe I would have been able to save him if I had fired, and because like obviously it took longer to do like that, and that again is where Lee would have been able to crack it faster, but yeah, that was also because in some ways Luke is like Lee, and Lees keep dying on Clem. I think that does cover the so over the course of it, I tried to not open up too much to too many characters. Every so often I would, let's see, I opened up to Rebecca and Luke when they asked about the past and such. But I otherwise didn't. For example, I think Carver asked, and I didn't really give him a lot of detail. And let's see. Yeah, I think right. It's also genuinely compelling. So the first one ends on the note of, well, is Clem all alone? Are those are the two silhouettes are Omid and Krista, or are they someone else? Like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure I mentioned my thoughts video on the first game, the first season. I didn't think they were walkers. I felt pretty confident based on the way they were moving that they were human, but it doesn't have to mean it's Kristen Omid. So, you're sitting there among flowers by yourself, but you're scared of just, like, it's pretty messed up that we're scared of just, yeah. But then this, it's like, well, I'm cautiously optimistic about Kenny 2.0, but certainly, like, I mean, what else are we gonna do? Like, there is no way that Jane and Clem on their own can fix up this place to make it safe, and then they need to go someplace else. Like, yeah, they got supplies there, but not much. Whereas, if they are able to, make this place, if they can create something that can be defended, then they can start doing raids of other, that sounds aggressive. They can go around looking for supplies every so often and return to base. But if they have to keep moving, they barely found a car that worked. It was only because of Kenny that it got working. Kenny's dead. What if they're stranded somewhere? So, technically, hypothetically, there is a better circumstance. There is a place they could stay for a while. And I'm not necessarily saying, I don't know if that means that, I mean, for all I know, by the, when the third season starts, we might already have moved on. There's maybe a line of dialogue to explain or something. And certainly, like, if it doesn't work out with that family, they probably do have to leave. I could certainly imagine. But and even if we do play at least some there, it's not necessarily going to be a place that we stay for a lot of gameplay, but maybe there's a time skip, and then then they leave it, but whatever. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think it would have been pretty boring if we were just, yet again, there's only the one character left, and or that we can see for sure, and that it's in this, like, obviously she can't stay in this nature as pretty as it is, and yeah, this fortress, like, maybe, or if they return it to the state of being a fortress, they can, and yeah, like, genuinely, I mean, does that mean we're not Carver? I don't know that that means that we're not Carver. I wouldn't rule out he started with good intentions. He genuinely did seem to think that he was protecting people. Like he has no reason to lie to Clem about that. Yeah, is really really compelling to have this thing of in the first one you also choose who your Lee is, but part of that is you're trying to prepare Clem for the future, and now it's like, well, did Lee prepare her well enough? And now there are these choices that, yeah, I think that covers the right. The thing with Carveran is people also not entirely unlike the bandits in the first season, but it feels very different. So nicely done on that. And I think that does cover, let's see. Yeah. It also won't be terribly long before I go back to watching, so the next one is season 1 of Fear the Walking Dead, because I did already do the first 5 seasons of the main Walking Dead show. And yeah, for sure yeah. Yeah, okay. Moving on. Let's see. Yeah, I think, God, my headache. I hope I can sleep more tonight than some of the recent nights. Let's see. I think the right, and I also appreciate the way that, like, hypothetically in season 3, it's possible that there will be more of the that I meet Mike, Arvo, and Bonnie again, and yeah, I think that covers everything. I thought it worked well. The thing about, I guess you're having trouble seeing a lot of things these days, because it's this thing of, like, in a way she is being this jerk, like essentially mocking that he, his eye is, but she's also communicating that she thinks there are things that he can't perceive clearly, and not because of anything physical. And yeah, I think that covers, let's see. And yeah, I mean, hypothetically, maybe Krista will show up in season 3 or 4. Yeah, really, really glad that I'm playing these. Yeah. It's right on the tip of my tongue. What was the very last thing I wanted to make sure to say about this? Let's see. So it's the I also really appreciated that, yeah, I mean, there was some off-screen stuff, but in this one, there was not that much of us seeing someone, very slowly turn. In the first, you had Duck, you had Lee, and then in this one, like, yeah, technically Sarita and Rebecca, but it doesn't actually, the yeah, um, once it's I guess, wait, Rebecca wasn't even bit, was she? She turned, but that was she died of natural, or yeah, I don't think she was bitten, come to think of it. But yeah, I thought that worked really well. It's a staple of the zombie subgenre that someone has to turn. Maybe someone is bitten or scratched or something, and yeah, it was really compelling. But they yeah, I appreciate that they didn't feel the need to do it. Especially, I think it would have been really silly if this game had ended with Clem slowly turning the way season 1 did with Lee. You know, that worked really well there. It would not have worked here. It would have felt like a retread. I think that does pretty well cover. I tried comforting Arvo. Now I remember. I tried comforting Arvo when and he just said, "Leave me alone." And yeah, during the let's see, the yeah, I was relieved that Clem just thought. I have to say, I just needed to see what she would even say if I had Clem say, "I know what you're talking about," and I like Bonnie chuckling. I certainly hope you don't. But yeah, Clem says, "You're talking about kissing and stuff," because like that is where what she knows about it. You know, yeah, that was a relief. And yeah, part of it was also just I kind of wanted to fuck with them because I was like, "You're really gonna talk about this in front of the kid? Okay, sure, I'll call your bluff." And yeah, and then there's the thing about, well, we didn't have time for kissing. I think that does cover, but yeah, that was a fuck up. Luke and Jane should have known better. It's all well and good that they're attracted to each other, and but like, you realize you could just, like, hypothetically, if Luke had walked back and asked, "Hey, can one of you come help keep an eye on things?" I just think it's better if there's multiple levels. And then, could have, once they get there, could have whispered to the actual lookout, "Hey, could you just, I'm gonna go be with Jane. Just, you know, as far as walkers go, if you see something, say something."